Beneath the rising sun, the desert is still. The sand is cool in the early light, and the air carries a dry silence that feels almost eternal. Before the first tour buses arrive, before the sound of footsteps and voices echo across the plateau, there is only the wind, and the stone before you stands the Great Pyramid of Giza, massive, immovable, older than the empires of Rome, older than the Parthenon, older even than most of recorded history itself. For more than 4,000 years, it has kept its vigil on the edge of the Sahara, an eternal monument to a civilization we think we know. We call it the Great Pyramid, but in the time of the ancients, it had another name, the Horizon of Khufu. Khufu, or Cheops, as the Greeks would later call him, was the second king of Egypt's fourth dynasty, and according to the history taught in textbooks, it was he who ordered this structure to be built. A tomb for himself, an eternal house for his Ka. His spirit, the facts as we know them, are simple and compelling. The pyramid rises to a height of roughly 146 meters in its original state. Its base covers more than 13 acres, and it is made up of more than 2,300,000 limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 70 tons. It is aligned almost perfectly to the four cardinal directions, and its base is nearly level to within a fraction of an inch. This is the story we have been told since childhood, that these pyramids were the work of the ancient Egyptians during the Old Kingdom period, some 4,500 years ago, that they were built by a massive labor force of skilled workers and seasonal crews, that they were constructed using ramps, copper chisels, and sledges dragged over the sand, and that they served as tombs for the great pharaohs. It is a story that is elegant, neat, and on the surface, it seems complete. But when you stand here, when you let your eyes trace the lines of these stones as they rise into the sky, when you run your fingers over the precision-cut edges, still sharp after millennia, questions begin to arise. How could a civilization without iron tools, without the wheel in common use, and without cranes or modern machinery, move and set millions of stones so precisely? How could they align this massive structure with true north to within a tiny fraction of a degree? Something we would find difficult to do even today, without lasers or GPS. And why, if this was the tomb of Khufu, is there no single inscription inside the Great Pyramid that clearly names him as its builder? The answers we have are partial. Archaeologists tell us of the workers' village discovered nearby, of the quarry marks hidden high in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. But these pieces of evidence do not speak in full sentences. They whisper, they hint, and the rest is left to us to imagine. Herodotus, the Greek historian, visited Egypt more than 2,000 years ago. He was told stories by the priests about the construction of the pyramids, stories of ramps that grew higher as the stones were lifted into place, stories of 100,000 men working for decades. But even in his time, the building of the Great Pyramid was already a mystery thousands of years old. Imagine that for a moment. Even to the ancients, these monuments were ancient. Even to them, the builders were figures of legend. The more you look, the more you realize that the Giza Plateau is not merely a cemetery of kings. It is a library, a stone record of something we still do not fully understand. The Pyramid of Khafre stands nearby, slightly smaller, but still magnificent, its summit still capped with a fragment of the original white casing stones, and beyond it, the Pyramid of Menkaure, smaller still, but built with the same precision. Together they form a pattern, 3 points on the desert floor, 3 silent sentinels guarding the west bank of the Nile. And then there is the Sphinx, its enigmatic face turned eastward to meet the rising sun, its body weathered by time, its origin still debated. Some say it was carved during Khafre's reign, others believe it may be far older, its surface showing signs of water erosion from a wetter, prehistoric age. It is here, among these stones, that our journey begins, not to dismiss the achievements of ancient Egypt, but to look deeper, to ask the questions that have lingered for centuries. Could it be that the pyramids were not built solely by the Egyptians we know from history books? Could they predate the Old Kingdom altogether? Could they be the inheritance of a forgotten civilization, one that passed down its knowledge to those who came later? We are not the first to ask these questions. For centuries, travelers, scholars, and mystics have speculated about the origins of the pyramids. Some have said they were built by giants, others by survivors of Atlantis, still others by beings not of this earth. The truth is elusive, hidden behind layers of sand, stone, and time. As you walk around the base of the Great Pyramid, you see the enormity of the task the builders faced. The blocks are taller than you are, some so massive that it is difficult to believe they were moved by human hands alone. Each corner of the pyramid meets with astonishing accuracy. Each side is almost perfectly straight, slightly concave, a subtle feature discovered only in the 20th century. The precision here is not accidental, it is deliberate, purposeful, and so, in this first chapter, we simply stand here and look, and allow the mystery to settle in, because this is where it begins, with the recognition that something here does not quite add up, that there is more to the story than we have been told, that these stones are not just a pile of blocks, but a message from the deep past, a message waiting to be read. This series will take us deep into that mystery. We will examine the evidence for and against the traditional story. We will explore the alternative theories, the radical ideas, the controversial discoveries, and we will ask what it means for our understanding of history if the pyramids are not merely tombs of kings. The sands of Giza have waited for millennia. They can wait a little longer. And so we begin slowly, carefully, step by step, stone by stone, because the enigma of Giza is not just a puzzle to solve. It is an invitation to remember that the past is not as fixed as we think, that history is not just a line moving forward, but a labyrinth we are still learning to navigate. Tonight, as the stars rise over the desert, and Orion's belt shines once more above the plateau, you might find yourself wondering, if these three pyramids were not built by the Egyptians we know, then who built them? And why? The answer may lie deeper than we ever imagined, hidden in stone waiting. The question seems simple: how were the pyramids built? We have all seen the diagrams in books, long ramps stretching out into the desert, workers pulling stones on sledges, overseers shouting commands under the hot Egyptian sun. It is an image that has been repeated so many times that it feels like memory. But the truth is, we do not know. Not for certain. Archaeologists have pieced together a picture, based on fragments of evidence, on workers' villages discovered nearby, on graffiti found high above the king's chamber that bears the name of Khufu, on tools and copper chisels found at ancient quarries, on tombs of workers buried with honor, suggesting they were not slaves but skilled laborers. This is the accepted narrative, and yet, as we stand here and look at this mountain of stone, the question grows more complicated. 2.3 million blocks, some weighing as much as 70 tons, each one quarried, transported and set into place with astonishing precision. The entire pyramid completed, we are told, in just over 20 years. That would mean setting a block in place every 2 to 3 minutes, day and night, for 2 decades, without pause. Imagine the logistics of such an undertaking, the organization of labor, the food and water required to support the workforce, the quarries that had to produce stone at an unprecedented rate, the transportation of blocks across the Nile, and the ramps. If ramps were indeed the method used, that had to be constantly rebuilt, extended and raised as the pyramid grew higher. The straight ramp theory was long favored by scholars, a massive causeway stretching from the desert floor to the growing pyramid, upon which stones were dragged on sledges lubricated with water. But such a ramp would have been more massive than the pyramid itself. It would have required almost as much material as the pyramid's construction, and there is little evidence left on the plateau of such a structure ever existing. Some have proposed a spiral ramp wrapping around the pyramid as it rose. This would have saved material, but it would have made precise placement of the uppermost stones extremely difficult, as workers would lose sight of the corners, and the corners are perfectly aligned. Others have suggested the use of counterweights, cranes made of wood, levers. Each theory solves one problem but creates another, What is clear is that the builders had knowledge, not just brute strength, but engineering skill. They understood geometry. They understood leveling and surveying. They understood how to organize thousands of workers in a project of staggering scale. Modern experiments have tried to replicate their work. Teams of engineers and Egyptologists have quarried limestone with copper chisels, dragged blocks over sand, and built small-scale pyramids. They have shown that it is possible, but always. The experiments are on a much smaller scale, a few dozen blocks at most, nothing approaching the millions required for the Great Pyramid. And then there is the question of precision. Stand at the base of the Great Pyramid and look along its side. The stones are fitted so closely that you can barely slide a piece of paper between them. The base is level to within a fraction of an inch across 13 acres. The sides are oriented almost perfectly to the 4 cardinal points. How was this done without compasses, without theodolites, without lasers? The builders may have used the stars. By watching the circumpolar stars rotate around the north celestial pole, they could have established true north with remarkable accuracy. But the precision here is such that even small errors would have accumulated across the vast base. And yet there are no such errors. Inside the pyramid, the puzzle deepens. The descending passage is aligned almost perfectly to the north, pointing to the pole star of the time. The grand gallery rises with an exact angle, leading to the king's chamber, a room constructed from massive granite beams brought from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. These beams weigh up to 70 tons each, and they are placed more than 40 meters above the ground. How were they lifted? Even today, with cranes and heavy equipment, this would be a challenge for a civilization of the Bronze Age. It borders on the incredible. And so we find ourselves back at the beginning. The image of ramps and workers is comforting, but incomplete. It does not capture the sense of wonder that one feels when standing here. It does not explain how so much was accomplished with so little, at least. So little that we can see in the archaeological record. This is not to say the Egyptians could not have done it. Far from it. They were master builders, astronomers, and mathematicians. Their temples, tombs, and monuments still stand after thousands of years. But the pyramids are in a class by themselves. They are something more. As you walk around the plateau, you notice something else. The quarry marks, the tool scars, the remains of unfinished stones, all evidence of human labor. And yet, there is a sense that what remains is only part of the story, as though we are seeing the last pages of a book whose earlier chapters have been lost. Perhaps the question is not just how the pyramids were built, but who taught the builders their craft, where their knowledge came from, and why. After the construction of the last pyramid, that knowledge seems to have vanished, for after Menkaure, the pyramids grow smaller, cruder. The old kingdom ends, and never again would Egypt build monuments of such scale. Something changed. Something was lost. And as the wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying with it the fine desert sand, you cannot help but wonder if we are missing some vital piece of the puzzle, if there was once a technique, a method, a knowledge now forgotten, perhaps buried under the very sands upon which we stand. As the day ends and the sun sets behind the pyramids, casting long shadows across the desert, the stones seem to glow with a quiet fire, and the question lingers, not just in the mind, but in the soul: how were they built? And will we ever truly know? Night falls over the Giza plateau. The heat of the day gives way to cool desert air. The crowds are gone, the noise has faded. Above you, the sky opens into an endless black ocean. The stars come out, one by one, Sirius first, then the bright belt of Orion, and soon the heavens are alive with light. It is here, under this same sky, that the builders of the pyramids once stood, and it is here that we begin to see another layer of the mystery. Because the pyramids are not only massive structures of stone, they are instruments. They are aligned, measured, and oriented with a precision that suggests the builders were not just architects, but astronomers. The Great Pyramid is oriented to true north, not magnetic north, but the very axis of the planet itself. Its four sides point almost exactly to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The error is so small, less than a fraction of a degree, that even today with satellites and GPS, we would find it difficult to improve upon how was this done. Without compasses, without modern tools, scholars believe the Egyptians used the stars. By watching the rotation of the circumpolar stars, those that circle endlessly around the north celestial pole, they could find true north with remarkable accuracy. But this is not just practical surveying. This is cosmic symbolism, because to the Egyptians, the circumpolar stars, the imperishables, represented eternity. They never set below the horizon, they never die. And so aligning the pyramid to these stars was an act of immortality, a way of connecting the pharaoh's soul to the eternal heavens. Look again at the three pyramids of Giza from the air. They seem to form a pattern that many have compared to the three stars of Orion's belt. This is the basis of what is called the Orion correlation theory. In the 1990s, Robert Bovell proposed that the layout of the three pyramids mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt. Khufu's Great Pyramid corresponds to Alnitak, the easternmost star, Khafre's pyramid to Alnilam, the central star, and Menkaura's to Mintaka, the smallest and faintest star of the three. Even the slight offset of Menkaura's pyramid matches the offset in the belt stars. When you stand on the plateau and imagine the sky as it would have appeared thousands of years ago, the alignment seems uncanny. If this correlation is correct, then the entire Giza plateau may be a star map carved in stone, a reflection of the heavens upon the earth. And that would mean the builders were not only measuring the ground, but also charting the sky. The interior of the Great Pyramid deepens the mystery. The so-called air shafts that lead from the king's chamber are not truly ventilation shafts at all. They are too small for human passage, and they point to specific regions of the sky. One shaft aligns with Orion's belt, another with Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Together, these alignments may have been meant to guide the pharaoh's soul to the realm of Osiris, the god of resurrection, who was associated with Orion. The measurements of the pyramid itself seem to encode other cosmic relationships. The perimeter of its base, compared to its height, forms a near-perfect ratio of 2 pi. This means that the pyramid could be seen as a representation of a circle, or the earth, squared in stone. Its proportions seem to reflect knowledge of the size of the earth, of the length of the year, of mathematical constants that we only formally defined thousands of years later. Is this coincidence? Or were the builders deliberately encoding this knowledge? And if they were, how did they know it? The measurement of the earth was not thought to have been calculated until the time of Eratosthenes, in the 3rd century BCE. Yet here it may be, built into a monument 2,000 years older. Some researchers have suggested that the builders possessed a level of scientific knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the Old Kingdom, that they may have inherited this knowledge from an earlier, lost civilization. But even if we set aside these more radical ideas, what remains is still astonishing. Because the pyramids were not simply placed randomly on the desert floor, their placement, their orientation, their dimensions, all of these were chosen with care. And together they form a message that links heaven and earth, a message that seems to say, we were here, and we understood the cosmos. This connection between sky and stone is not unique to Egypt. Across the world, other ancient monuments show similar alignments. Stonehenge in England, aligned to the solstices. Teotihuacan in Mexico, whose Avenue of the Dead points to the setting of the Pleiades. Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, where stone circles predate the pyramids and mark the rising of key stars. It seems that wherever ancient humans built in stone, they looked to the sky, they measured, they tracked, they recorded, and they built monuments that would endure, so that future generations might also look up and wonder. Standing on the Giza plateau at night, it is easy to feel this connection. The pyramids seem to glow faintly in the starlight, and Orion hangs above them like a cosmic mirror. Perhaps this was the point, to remind us that we are not merely creatures of the earth, but of the heavens as well, that our lives are part of a larger pattern, and so the mystery deepens, because the more we learn about the precision and alignment of the pyramids, the less they seem to be mere tombs, and the more they seem to be something else entirely, a calendar, a compass, a star map, a message written in the language of geometry and light. As you stand there, beneath the ancient sky, you might feel that you are standing not just in a place, but in a moment when the earth and the heavens were brought together, when human hands turned stone into a mirror of the cosmos. And the question that lingers is not only how they built the pyramids, but why. Why go to such extraordinary lengths to align these structures to the stars? Why encode such knowledge into stone? Why leave such a message for those who would come thousands of years later? Perhaps because they wanted us to ask these questions, to look up at the night sky, and to remember the stars wheel overhead, as they have for millennia, and the pyramids remain silent, watching, waiting. The desert is quiet again, the heat of the day has faded, and the stones, older than empires, seem to breathe with the cool night air. Tonight, we turn our attention to one of the most controversial questions of all: how old are these monuments? Not according to textbooks, not according to the official history, but according to the stones themselves. Mainstream Egyptology tells us that the pyramids were built around 2500 BCE, that the Great Pyramid was completed during the reign of Khufu, that the Sphinx was carved during the reign of Khafre, Khufu's son. But when we look closely, when we look with fresh eyes, something about this timeline begins to feel incomplete. Start with the Sphinx. Its massive body crouches at the edge of the plateau, facing east, watching the sun rise for thousands of years. Its face, serene, enigmatic, is battered by time. But it is not just the face that tells a story. Look at the body. The walls of the Sphinx enclosure are deeply weathered, not by wind but by water. They are rounded, undulating, like rocks shaped by centuries of rain. This observation was made famous by geologist Robert Schoch in the early 1990s. He argued that the kind of weathering seen here could not have been caused by mere sand and wind. It required significant, sustained rainfall that has not fallen on this part of Egypt for thousands of years. Climatologists tell us that the Sahara was not always a desert. During the so-called African humid period, roughly 10,000 to 5,000 BCE, this region was lush and green lakes dotted the landscape. Animals roamed the savanna, and rain was far more common than it is today if Schoch is correct. Then the Sphinx may predate Khafre by thousands of years. It may have been carved not during the Old Kingdom, but during a time when the climate was very different, perhaps as far back as 7,000 or even 10,000 BCE. This idea is controversial. Many Egyptologists reject it. They point to inscriptions that associate the Sphinx with Khafre. They argue that the weathering could be explained by other means, perhaps rising groundwater or chemical processes. But the idea will not go away, because when you stand inside the Sphinx enclosure, you can feel the weight of time in those eroded walls. You can see the difference between the Sphinx and later Old Kingdom structures. The Sphinx feels older, far older. And if the Sphinx is older, what about the pyramids? Here, too, there are hints that the official chronology may not tell the whole story. The Great Pyramid is unique. No pyramid that came after it matches its scale, precision, or perfection. In fact, after the pyramids of Giza, the quality of construction declines. Later pyramids are smaller, cruder, often collapsing into rubble. It is as though the builders of Giza had knowledge, technical, mathematical, perhaps even spiritual, that was later lost. Some researchers have suggested that the Giza pyramids may not have been built by the Fourth Dynasty at all, that Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure may have simply inherited them, that their role was one of restoration and repurposing, not original construction. There are precedents for this in Egypt. Pharaohs were known to inscribe their names on statues and monuments built by earlier rulers, claiming the legacy of the past for themselves. Could it be that the pyramids were already ancient when Khufu came to power? If so, who built them and when? Theories abound. Some suggest they were built by a forgotten civilization that thrived during the last ice age. A civilization destroyed by the cataclysms that ended that age, rising seas, shifting climates, perhaps even cosmic impacts. The idea is tantalizing, and it fits with discoveries at sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a massive stone temple complex dating back to 9500 BCE. Göbekli Tepe shows that humans at the end of the Ice Age were capable of sophisticated architecture and symbolic thought. If they could build Göbekli Tepe, could others have built Giza? There is also the question of astronomical alignments. If the pyramids are meant to mirror Orion's belt, then their alignment matches the sky most precisely not in 2500 BCE, but around 10,500 BCE, the so-called Zep Tepi, the first time of Egyptian mythology, the age when the gods were said to have walked among men. Is this coincidence? Or are the pyramids a message from a deep past we have forgotten? Even the erosion patterns on the plateau itself raise questions. Some of the quarries show signs of being ancient, weathered long before the Fourth Dynasty, and the bedrock beneath the pyramid's foundation was leveled with astonishing precision, as though by master engineers. To look at these monuments and say that they are simply 4,500 years old feels, to some, like reading the last chapter of a book and assuming you know the whole story. And so we are left with a choice. Do we accept the conventional chronology, trusting the inscriptions and king lists that have survived? Or do we listen to the stones themselves and entertain the possibility that the story is much older, much stranger than we ever imagined? The sands of Egypt are deep. They hide as much as they reveal, and perhaps beneath them lie the clues that would settle this question once and for all. Until then, we stand here between past and present, between history and mystery, and we wait, because the age of the monuments is not just a question of dates, it is a question of identity, of who we are, and where we came from, of what we once knew, and what we have forgotten. And as the stars wheel overhead, as they have for tens of thousands of years, we cannot help but feel that we are not just looking back into history, but into something older, something primordial. Perhaps the pyramids are not just markers of time, but bridges between ages, between worlds. And if that is true, then the question is not simply how old they are, but what they were meant to tell us. The desert wind blows softly through the Sphinx enclosure, and the ancient face seems to smile as though it knows the answer, and is in no hurry to share it. Dawn breaks once again over the Giza plateau. The first light touches the face of the great Sphinx. Its gaze, fixed toward the east, catches the rising sun just as it has for thousands of years. This ancient guardian has watched empires rise and fall. It has stood through storms, through conquest, through centuries of silence. But beneath its weathered body lies one of the most enduring mysteries of all, because the Sphinx is not just a sculpture, it is part of something much larger, a network of tunnels, shafts, and chambers, some known, some still hidden beneath the sands of Giza. Over the centuries, explorers have searched for secrets under the Sphinx. Legends speak of a hidden library, a hall of records, buried somewhere beneath its paws, a chamber containing the wisdom of a forgotten civilization, a record of the world before the last great cataclysm. This legend was most famously popularized by Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet. In the early 20th century, Cayce claimed that survivors of Atlantis brought their knowledge to Egypt after the destruction of their homeland, and that they stored this knowledge in a secret chamber beneath the Sphinx, a chamber that would be discovered in a future age. When humanity was ready, to most scholars, Cayce's claims are dismissed as fantasy. And yet, the idea of hidden chambers beneath the plateau has persisted. In the 1920s and 30s, excavators reported finding tunnels and cavities near the Sphinx. In the 1970s, Egyptologist Mark Lehner mapped the area extensively and found evidence of fissures and possible passages. But it was in the late 20th century, with the advent of modern technology, that the search truly deepened. Ground-penetrating radar surveys were carried out around the Sphinx. Some of these scans seem to show anomalies, voids, rectangular cavities beneath the monument's paws and body. In 1993, a team led by Thomas Dobke and John Anthony West found a large rectangular anomaly under the Sphinx's left paw. They described it as having a well-defined outline that did not appear to be a natural feature. Permission to excavate has been limited. Egyptian authorities have been cautious, preferring to preserve the site. Some researchers believe that whatever lies beneath has not yet been fully explored. Elsewhere on the plateau, discoveries of hidden spaces have been confirmed. In 2017, a team using muon tomography, a technique that detects cosmic particles passing through stone, discovered a large void above the Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid. This was the first major internal discovery since the 19th century, and it suggests that even after centuries of exploration, Giza still holds secrets. What might lie beneath the Sphinx? Some imagine a simple storage room, others a ceremonial chamber, perhaps used for initiation rites, and still others envision something far more profound, a time capsule of human history, preserved for millennia. Whatever the truth, the idea of hidden chambers fascinates us because it suggests that the story of Giza is incomplete, that there is more to be found. Imagine what it would mean to discover an untouched chamber beneath the sands, to open a room sealed since the age of the pharaohs, or perhaps even earlier. What will we find there? Scrolls, artifacts, knowledge that could rewrite history. The Sphinx itself seems to invite such speculation. Its head is disproportionately small compared to its massive body, leading some to suggest that it was recarved from an earlier lion-headed statue. If true, this would make the Sphinx even older than the conventional date suggests. And then there is the curious alignment. The Sphinx faces due east, directly toward the point where the sun rises on the spring equinox. But some researchers argue that its alignment matches the sky most perfectly around 10,500 BCE, when the constellation Leo would have risen in the east at dawn. Leo, the lion. If this is more than coincidence, then the Sphinx may have been placed here to mark a celestial moment, a first time, a rebirth of the world after a great catastrophe. This would make the Sphinx not just a guardian of a necropolis, but a guardian of memory, of knowledge preserved through the ages. Beneath the plateau, a labyrinth of tunnels has been reported since antiquity. Some passages lead to storage chambers, some to ancient boat pits, some to tombs of workers and nobles, but many are still unexplored, blocked by debris, or lost to the shifting sands. The plateau is like an iceberg. What we see on the surface is only a fraction of what lies below. In this chapter, we are not here to claim that the Hall of Records is real, but we are here to acknowledge the possibility, to acknowledge that Giza may still hold secrets we have not uncovered. As night falls again, the stars come out, the Sphinx lies in shadow, its face turned toward the heavens. The wind stirs the sand, and somewhere beneath your feet, perhaps a sealed door waits to be opened. It is this possibility that keeps explorers searching, decade after decade, that drives scientists to develop ever more sophisticated scanning technologies, that inspires writers and dreamers to imagine what might be found. And it is this possibility that draws us deeper into the mystery of Giza, because if there are still chambers to be found, still records to be uncovered, then the story of the pyramids is not over. It is still being written, and one day, perhaps we will turn the page and discover that the past we thought we knew was only the beginning. Until then, the Sphinx keeps its silence, watching the sun rise, day after day, waiting for the moment when its secret will be revealed. The moon is high over Giza. Its light bathes the plateau in silver, and the pyramids cast long, pale shadows across the sand. Here they stand, three great monuments rising from the desert. But Giza is not the only place on Earth where the pyramid form appears. Far from Egypt, across oceans and continents, the same shape rises from the earth, silent, mysterious. Enduring in Mexico, at Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun towers over the Avenue of the Dead. Its massive base rivals that of the Great Pyramid. It too is oriented to cardinal directions, and its smaller companion, the Pyramid of the Moon, sits nearby. Together, they form the heart of a city whose name means the place where men become gods. Farther south, at Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of Kukulkan rises from the jungle on the equinox. Its stairway casts a shadow that forms the body of a serpent, connecting heaven and earth. In Guatemala, at Tikal, the great temples rise like stone mountains, their summits piercing the forest canopy. And in Peru, pyramids of adobe dot the desert, some older than the Inca, older even than the great civilizations we know. In China, near Xi'an, there are dozens of massive earthen pyramids, some hidden beneath trees, others standing solitary in the fields. They are tombs of emperors, but their origins and alignments suggest careful cosmic design. In Indonesia, on the island of Java, the massive step pyramid of Gunung Padang has been revealed beneath layers of volcanic soil. Some researchers believe it may be the oldest pyramid-like structure in the world, dating back perhaps 12,000 years. Even in Bosnia, a cluster of pyramid-shaped hills has sparked controversy. Some say they are natural formations. Others insist they are man-made structures, their geometry too precise to be coincidence. And so the question arises, why the pyramid? Why did so many cultures, separated by oceans, by time, by language, choose the same form? The pyramid is, of course, a natural shape. Stack stones or bricks high enough, and they will naturally form a sloping mound. It is stable, enduring, a shape that resists collapse. But is that the only reason? Some suggest that the pyramid shape has energetic properties, that it focuses energy at its apex, that it can preserve objects, sharpen blades, even affect plant growth. These claims are difficult to prove scientifically, but they add to the sense that the pyramid is more than a mere tomb. Across the world, pyramids are often aligned to the stars, to the solstices, to the points of the compass. They are not random heaps of stone. They are deliberate, precise, symbolic. Could there have been a connection between these distant cultures? Could knowledge have spread across the oceans in a time before history was recorded? Mainstream archaeology tells us that these civilizations developed independently, that there was no global contact in the deep past, that the similarities are coincidental, the result of parallel evolution. But others see in these parallels the traces of a lost global culture, a seafaring people who carried knowledge from one continent to another, a civilization that existed before the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were lower and land bridges connected many regions now separated by water. Plato wrote of Atlantis, a great civilization that vanished beneath the sea around 9600 BCE. Many have dismissed it as myth, but the timing he gives coincides with dramatic climate events. The melting of glaciers, the flooding of coastlines, the younger Dryas period of sudden cooling and chaos. Could survivors of such a cataclysm have spread across the world, bringing with them the knowledge of astronomy, architecture, and geometry? Could the pyramids be their legacy, a way of remembering, of marking sacred sites across the globe? This idea is bold, controversial, but as we walk among the pyramids of Giza, and then imagine the jungles of Mesoamerica, the fields of China, the deserts of Peru, it is hard not to feel that a thread connects them. Even the myths are similar. Gods descending from the sky, teaching humanity the arts of agriculture, writing, and building. Kings who are half divine, who rule in a golden age. And then a great flood, a catastrophe, a fall. Perhaps these stories are not separate myths, but fragments of a single memory, a memory of something the world once knew, and then lost. The pyramid then becomes not just a building, but a message, a beacon, a reminder that we are part of something larger, a reminder that the sky and the earth are connected, that our ancestors knew more than we think. As night falls over Giza once more, and the stars emerge, the feeling grows stronger. These are not just tombs of kings. They are part of a pattern that spans the globe, a pattern that may one day be fully understood. But until then, we stand here, looking across oceans and centuries, connecting the dots in our minds. And we wonder if perhaps humanity's story is far older, far grander than we ever imagined. The desert wind whispers across the plateau, the stones hold their silence, and the mystery deepens. The night is very still. The desert stars seem almost close enough to touch, and as you stand on the Giza plateau, you feel as though you are looking back not just thousands of years, but tens of thousands, because tonight we step even deeper into the mystery, into a time before history, into the shadowy memory of civilizations that may have come before our own mainstream archaeology teaches that civilization began around 6,000 years ago, that humans lived as simple hunter-gatherers until they discovered agriculture, that cities, writing, astronomy, and monumental building emerged only after that discovery. But what if this is not the whole story? What if there was an earlier chapter, one now mostly erased by time? There are clues scattered across the globe, clues that suggest that long before Mesopotamia, long before Egypt, long before the Sumerians carved cuneiform into clay tablets, there may have been other cultures, advanced in ways we still do not fully understand. Consider Göbekli Tepe, in southeastern Turkey, discovered in the 1990s. This site has rewritten much of what we thought we knew about human history. Massive stone pillars arranged in circles, some carved with animals and abstract symbols, and all of it dating back to around 9500 BCE, more than 7,000 years before Stonehenge. According to conventional history, this should not exist. People of that era were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, without the organization or technology to build such monuments. And yet, they did. If a society could build Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago, what else might have existed then? Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, told of a mighty civilization called Atlantis, a land beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, a land that was wealthy, powerful, and advanced, and that was destroyed in a single terrible day and night of floods and earthquakes. For centuries, Atlantis has been dismissed as myth, but Plato was clear that his account came from Egyptian priests, that it was a story of real history, not fiction, and he dated its destruction to roughly 9600 BCE. That date is intriguing, because modern science tells us that around 12,800 to 11,600 years ago, the Earth underwent dramatic changes, a period known as the Younger Dryas. Temperatures plunged, then rose again rapidly, glaciers melted, sea levels rose more than 100 meters, coastlines were drowned, entire landscapes transformed. Some researchers believe that this was caused by a cosmic impact, perhaps fragments of a comet striking the ice sheets. Such an event would have caused massive flooding, wildfires, and a collapse of ecosystems. If there had been a civilization living along the coasts during that time, much of it would have been destroyed, its cities swallowed by the rising seas, its survivors scattered to the winds, and perhaps some of them came here, to Egypt, to the banks of the Nile, carrying with them their knowledge of the stars, of mathematics, of sacred architecture. Perhaps the pyramids are not just tombs, but the inheritance of a lost age, the last great work of a world now almost forgotten. Other clues suggest the existence of ancient knowledge passed down through time. The Peary Rise map, drawn in the 16th century, seems to show the coastline of Antarctica free of ice, something not known to have been mapped until the 20th century. Where did that knowledge come from? Megalithic sites around the world show evidence of advanced stone-cutting techniques. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, massive blocks are carved with machine-like precision. At Baalbek in Lebanon, stones weighing more than 1,000 tons were quarried and moved, something we would struggle to do even today, even in Egypt. The granite inside the Great Pyramid is cut with incredible accuracy. Drill holes and saw marks suggest the use of tools beyond simple copper chisels. Could it be that we are looking at the work of a culture that had a technology we do not fully recognize? Not necessarily electricity and machines as we know them, but perhaps a different kind of technology, one based on harmonics, on sound, on an understanding of energy in nature that we have lost. If so, the pyramids may be more than tombs. They may be machines of a kind, designed to focus energy, to tune the earth like a giant instrument. Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant theory suggests that the Great Pyramid was built to resonate, to generate or transmit power in some unknown way. Whether or not we accept that theory, it reminds us that we cannot assume we understand the purpose of these monuments. They may have served many roles: ceremonial, astronomical, spiritual, perhaps even functional in ways we have yet to discover. And so the mystery grows, because if there was a lost civilization, then what we call history is only the second act of a much older drama. Imagine for a moment what it would mean if we found proof of such a civilization. If divers off the coast of India discovered the ruins of a city beneath the sea, complete with temples and streets. If archaeologists uncovered a library of stone tablets describing the world as it was before the flood. If we learned that humanity's story stretches back not 6,000 years, but 12, or even 20, how would that change our sense of ourselves? Would it humble us or inspire us? The winds of the desert are cold tonight. The stars shine as they did for those who came before, and the pyramids, those eternal witnesses, seem to hold their breath. Perhaps they have seen this cycle before. Perhaps they are not just monuments, but messages. Messages meant to last through the rise and fall of civilizations. Messages meant to remind us that we are part of a much larger story. And as you stand here, you cannot help but feel that story calling to you across the ages, across the silence. The past is not gone, it is here, written in stone, waiting for us to remember. The desert wind is quiet tonight. The moonlight glints off the weathered limestone, and the Great Pyramid seems almost alive. A mountain of stone that hums softly in the imagination. For centuries we have thought of the pyramids as tombs, as monuments to kings. But there is another way to look at them, as machines. When you step inside the Great Pyramid, you feel something unusual. The air is still, heavy. The narrow descending passage draws you downward, into the bedrock itself. The stones press close around you, and then, after climbing the grand gallery, you arrive at the king's chamber. This room is unlike any other in Egypt. It is built entirely of massive granite blocks. Its roof is made of even larger granite beams, stacked in 5 layers of so-called relieving chambers. And the room has a peculiar acoustic quality. If you stand inside and hum, your voice resonates, filling the chamber with sound. It is as though the room is tuned, as though it was designed not just to house a sarcophagus, but to sing. Christopher Dunn, an engineer and master craftsman, has argued that the Great Pyramid was in fact a power plant, that it was designed to resonate with the natural frequencies of the earth, that it used water from the Nile, flowing through underground channels, to generate a kind of harmonic vibration. According to Dunn, the pyramid's internal layout, the descending passage, the ascending passage, the grand gallery, could have acted like components in a machine. The Queen's chamber, with its strange air shafts, may have contained chemicals that produced hydrogen gas. The grand gallery could have amplified sound and vibration, and the king's chamber could have been the final resonator, converting the energy into microwaves or some other form of power. This theory is bold. It is not accepted by mainstream Egyptology, but it has captured the imagination of many who visit the pyramid and feel that it is more than just a tomb. Even if we set aside the power plant hypothesis, there is still the question of why such precision was necessary. Why align the pyramid so perfectly to true north? Why level the base so carefully? Why transport granite from Aswan, 500 miles away, when limestone would have sufficed for a simple tomb? Perhaps because the builders were working toward a function that required precision, resonance, and stability. Acoustics researchers have studied the king's chamber and found that it resonates at specific frequencies. particularly around 440 Hz, the same as the musical note A when multiple people chant or sing inside. The sound builds, becoming almost overwhelming. Could this have been used in ancient rituals? Or was it part of some process we no longer understand? Water may also have played a role. The plateau itself contains subterranean aquifers. Some researchers have suggested that water flowing beneath the pyramid could induce vibration in the structure, turning the entire monument into a kind of giant tuning fork. Ancient depictions, such as those in the Temple of Dendera, show what appear to be large bulbs connected by wires. Images some interpret as evidence of electricity, others see them as symbolic, not literal, but the possibility remains that the ancients understood and used natural forms of energy in ways we no longer do. If the pyramid was indeed a machine, its purpose remains speculative: power generation, communication, spiritual initiation. Perhaps all of these, in ways that blended science and spirituality. What is certain is that the Great Pyramid is a masterpiece of engineering. Its core stones are fitted with astonishing precision. Its passages are straight and true, even after thousands of years. Its weight, nearly 6 million tons, is distributed so perfectly that it has stood through earthquakes that have toppled lesser structures. No wonder some have suggested that its builders possessed a knowledge far beyond what we usually attribute to the Bronze Age. And perhaps this is the real point. Not that the pyramid was a power plant in the way we think of power plants, but that it was a tool to focus energy, whether physical, spiritual, or cosmic, a tool to connect heaven and earth, to align the soul of the king with the stars, to harmonize the human with the divine. As you stand in the king's chamber, in the silence so deep you can hear your own heartbeat, you feel the weight of that intention. This was not built casually. It was not just a monument to vanity, it was a work of devotion. And as you leave the pyramid, emerging once more into the desert night, you feel changed, as though you have stepped out of a machine that was not meant to generate electricity, but awareness. The wind sweeps across the plateau, the stars shine cold and distant, and the pyramid looms behind you, silent but somehow humming with memory. Perhaps it is still working. Perhaps it is still singing its song to the universe, and perhaps one day we will remember how to listen. The wind is soft tonight. The pyramids loom like silhouettes against a sky filled with stars, and as you stand there, you begin to realize that the mystery of Giza is not just about stone and sand, it is also about people, about the way we tell the story of the past, and about the sometimes fierce debate over what those stories mean. For over 2 centuries, Egyptology has been a respected science. Archaeologists, linguists, and historians have painstakingly pieced together the story of ancient Egypt. They have deciphered hieroglyphs, cataloged tombs, studied the dynasties, and in doing so, they have built a coherent narrative, a narrative that tells us when and how these monuments were built. According to this narrative, the Great Pyramid was constructed around 2500 BCE. Khufu was its builder. Tens of thousands of workers lived in nearby villages, supported by a vast agricultural economy. They used copper chisels to cut the stone, sledges to drag it, and ramps to lift it into place. And when the work was done, they left behind one of the most enduring structures on Earth. This narrative is compelling. It is supported by real evidence: quarry marks, workers' tombs, tools, and for many scholars it is enough. But outside the halls of academia, a different story has been taking shape, a story told by alternative researchers, by independent explorers, by authors and filmmakers who see the pyramids not as mere tombs, but as something more. These researchers point to anomalies, to the precision of the stonework, which seems too exact for copper tools, to the astronomical alignments, which seem to encode knowledge far beyond what we would expect from the Old Kingdom, to the lack of inscriptions inside the Great Pyramid naming Khufu or describing its construction. They argue that the official story leaves too many questions unanswered, and they propose other explanations: lost civilizations, advanced ancient technology, even intervention from beings beyond our world. The clash between these two perspectives can be intense. Mainstream Egyptologists often dismiss alternative theories as pseudoscience. They warn that such ideas can mislead the public, overshadow genuine discoveries, and disrespect the culture that built these monuments. Alternative researchers, in turn, accuse orthodox scholars of being closed-minded, of protecting their careers and reputations rather than following the evidence wherever it leads, of clinging to a paradigm that no longer fits the data. This tension has created a kind of stalemate. The public is caught between two narratives, one sober and cautious, the other bold and speculative, and in the space between them, the mystery continues to grow. It is important to remember that archaeology is not just about digging in the dirt. It is about interpreting what is found, and interpretation is shaped by human biases, by the assumptions of the time, by the limits of technology. A century ago, many Egyptologists believed that the pyramids were built by slaves. That image of whipped laborers under the hot sun became part of popular culture. But recent evidence, the workers' village, the graves of laborers buried with honor, has shown that the builders were skilled, respected workers. If our understanding could change so much in one century, what might it look like in another? Perhaps some of the alternative ideas will one day be proven right. Perhaps others will fade into myth. But the value of these theories may lie not in their certainty, but in their ability to keep us asking questions. Because questions are what drive discovery. It was a question that led Champollion to decode the Rosetta Stone, a question that led Howard Carter to break the seal on Tutankhamun's tomb, and it will be questions that lead future generations to uncover whatever remains hidden at Giza. There is also the matter of control. Who gets to decide what excavations are permitted? Who owns the past? Who has the authority to interpret it? These are not just academic questions. They are political. They touch on issues of national pride, cultural heritage, and the fear of exploitation by outsiders. Egypt is protective of its treasures, and rightly so. But this has sometimes meant that promising leads go uninvestigated, or that controversial digs are halted, leaving the mystery suspended in time, waiting for a moment when it can be explored without controversy. And so the pyramids stand, caught between worlds, between science and speculation, between past and present, between certainty and mystery. As you stand there tonight, you may feel that both sides are necessary. The caution of science, which insists on evidence, and the curiosity of alternative researchers, who refuse to stop wondering. Between these two forces, the truth slowly emerges, stone by stone, discovery by discovery. Perhaps one day the debate will end when the last hidden chamber is opened, when the last block is measured, and the last inscription translated, when we finally know for certain who built these monuments, and why. But perhaps the mystery is part of their power. Perhaps the pyramids were meant to inspire debate, to provoke wonder, to keep us looking upward. The stars still turn above the desert, and the stones remain, silent witnesses to a story that is not yet finished. The voices of scholars, of skeptics, of dreamers and explorers, all of them are part of that story, each one adding a new layer, a new chapter, a new question. And in the quiet of the night, the pyramids seem almost to smile, as if they know that the argument itself is part of the plan, that the mystery is what keeps them alive in our imagination. Tomorrow the debate will continue. But tonight, under the stars, you can simply stand here, feel the weight of the past, and let the silence speak. The desert is quiet one last time. The night sky glows with 1,000 stars, and the pyramids stand dark against the horizon, as they have for millennia. We have walked through this mystery together. We have stood on the plateau at dawn and watched the sun rise over the Sphinx. We have traced the lines of the stones with our hands. We have followed the corridors deep inside the Great Pyramid, and we have asked questions: who built them? When and why? Tonight we do not seek to answer these questions with certainty, because perhaps certainty was never the point. The pyramids are not merely monuments. They are mirrors. They reflect back to us our own curiosity, our hunger to know where we came from. They challenge us to look deeper, into history, into the cosmos, and into ourselves. Think of all the generations who have stood where we stand, the priests of ancient Egypt, performing rituals beneath the stars, the travelers of Greece and Rome, marveling at these wonders of the ancient world, the scholars of the Middle Ages, who saw them as granaries from the time of Joseph, the explorers and archaeologists of the modern era, who climbed their steps and pried open their chambers, and now us, looking, wondering, dreaming. There is a reason these monuments have outlasted empires, a reason they have survived conquest, earthquakes, and the slow erosion of time. They were built to endure not just as tombs, but as messages. Perhaps the message is simple, a reminder of human greatness, that we are capable of incredible feats when we work together, when we dare to dream beyond the limits of the possible. Perhaps the message is cosmic, that we are connected to the stars, that our lives are part of a larger pattern, that we are meant to remember our place in the great story of the universe. Or perhaps the message is still waiting to be understood, hidden in the alignment of the stones, in the chambers yet unopened, in the mathematics of their dimensions, waiting for a future generation that will know how to read it. The mystery of the pyramids is not just about the past. It is about the future, about the kind of questions we are willing to ask, and the kind of answers we are willing to seek. When we look at the Great Pyramid, we are reminded of how small we are, and yet how capable. We are reminded that we, too, can build something that lasts, that our actions, our choices, can ripple forward in time. The sands of Giza whisper around your feet. The night is cool, the air still, and in the silence you can almost hear the voices of those who came before, the workers who shaped each block, the priests who lit torches inside the grand gallery, the astronomers who measured the stars before laying the foundation. They are gone now, but their work remains, a testament to their vision, a gift to the future, and perhaps that is the real legacy of the pyramids, that they invite us to think in spans of time longer than a single lifetime, that they remind us that we are part of a chain stretching back into the past and forward into the future. Tomorrow, the sun will rise over the plateau again. The pyramids will glow in the morning light. Tourists will arrive. Cameras will click. Guides will speak. Life will go on. But tonight, in this stillness, the mystery feels close, close enough to touch, close enough to feel in your chest. And as you breathe in the desert air, you realize that maybe the greatest mystery is not who built the pyramids, but why they still matter to us. Perhaps they matter because they are proof that something can endure, that even in a world of impermanence, of shifting sands, of fragile lives, something can stand for thousands of years and still speak. And so, as we come to the end of this journey, we leave the plateau as we found it, silent, vast, timeless. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The constellations move across the sky just as they did for the builders, and somewhere far to the east, the first hint of dawn touches the horizon. The night has passed, but the mystery remains, waiting for those who will come after us, waiting for the next generation of dreamers, explorers, and seekers. The pyramids will still be here, watching, listening, keeping their secrets, and perhaps that is how it was meant to be. Because some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be lived, to be wondered at, to be remembered. The wind moves across the desert one last time, and you turn away from the plateau, carrying the silence with you, knowing that something inside you has shifted. You have walked among the oldest monuments on Earth, and in their shadow you have glimpsed the vastness of time and perhaps the vastness of yourself.